Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. On the frozen continent, where the sun had been missing for as long as anyone could remember, the cold had become a way of life. People adapted, but only barely. Settlements were small, scattered across the icy wasteland, clinging to life with whatever heat they could muster. Fires, fueled by magic, had become sacred, cherished like treasures that kept them from succumbing to the endless night. In one of these small settlements, where the cold seemed to grip everything in its relentless grasp, a young woman named Lilia stood in the flickering light of a dying fire. She was a survivor. Her family had been taken by the cold long ago, and now only she remained. Her village, once thriving, was on the brink of collapse. The elders spoke in hushed tones, and the youngest children barely knew the warmth of sunlight. The world, it seemed, was sinking into an abyss of ice and darkness, but there was a rumor. A whisper of hope that traveled with the wind through these forsaken lands. The flame of eternal night. It was said that deep within the forbidden mountains, a fire burned that could reignite the sun itself and bring warmth back to the world. Most dismissed it as a tale, a desperate story told to bring comfort to the suffering. But Lilia believed. In her heart, she knew that if there was any chance of saving her people, she had to try. The decision came to her like a cold breeze, sharp and clear. She would leave the village, travel across the desolate ice fields, and find the flame. Armed with little more than a blade, some provisions, and her unshakable resolve, she set out, her breath crystallizing in the air as she stepped beyond the village's protective walls. The first days were punishing. The wind howled endlessly, biting at her exposed skin, but Lilia pressed on. She knew the stories. Those who wandered too far into the frozen wasteland rarely returned. But the thought of giving up was unbearable. She had to move forward, or else the world would remain trapped in the icy grip of eternal night. It wasn't long before the dangers of the wild revealed themselves. As she ventured deeper into the wilderness, she was ambushed by frost wolves. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and their growls were low, resonating in the still air. Lilia's heart raced as she drew her blade, knowing that one misstep would mean her end. The wolves were faster, stronger, but Lilia had the advantage of desperation. With swift, precise strikes, she defended herself, cutting through the wolves' ranks until only silence remained. Breathing heavily, her muscles aching from the fight, Lilia knew this was just the beginning. The wilderness had more to throw at her, and the road ahead was long. As days passed, the landscape grew even more hostile. Ice formations taller than the tallest trees towered over her, and the very air seemed to crackle with magic. It was in one of these desolate stretches of land that she met Alaric. He was a mage, shrouded in a cloak of dark fabric that seemed to blend into the shadows around him. Lilia, wary of strangers, hesitated when he appeared, his staff glowing faintly in the dark. "I've been watching you," he said, his voice low and calm. "You're searching for the flame." Lilia tightened her grip on her sword. "What's it to you?" Alaric smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I seek the same. But for different reasons." Lilia wasn't sure what to make of him. There was something about his presence that unsettled her, but at the same time, she knew she couldn't make it through the forbidden mountains alone. The journey was too dangerous, and Alaric, with his knowledge of magic, might just be the ally she needed. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. "We can work together. But if you betray me, I'll kill you." Alaric's smile grew, but there was no warmth in it. "I wouldn't dream of it." Their uneasy alliance began with silence. Alaric spoke little, preferring to keep his thoughts to himself, but Lilia observed him closely. He moved with an eerie grace, and his magic was powerful. She'd seen him create protective barriers around their camp at night, keeping the more dangerous creatures of the wilderness at bay. Yet something about him still felt off. They ventured through ancient ruins, remnants of a world long forgotten, where magic hummed in the air. Here, they found inscriptions, carved into stone, speaking of the flame of eternal night. According to the markings, the flame was hidden within the heart of the Forbidden Mountains, protected by dark forces older than the world itself. But Lilia was undeterred. She had come too far to turn back now. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thin, and the cold became unbearable. The landscape itself seemed to conspire against them. Massive ice shards jutted from the ground like the teeth of some ancient beast, and the wind was so strong it threatened to knock them off the narrow paths. It was here, in the highest reaches of the mountains, that they encountered the shadow wraiths. These ghostly figures, born of darkness and magic, had no form other than the twisted shapes of smoke and shadow. They moved silently, their presence only betrayed by the sudden drop in temperature and the feeling of dread they left behind. Lilia fought them with her sword, but they were not creatures of flesh and blood. It was Alaric who saved her, using his magic to dispel the wraiths, but each time they faced the wraiths, it drained him. One night, as they sat by a small fire, Alaric finally spoke about his past. He wasn't searching for the flame to save the world. Once, he had sought it for power. He had been part of a group of mages who believed the flame could grant them godlike abilities, but his greed had cost him everything. Now, he sought redemption. Lilia didn't trust him fully, but she understood the weight of guilt. The closer they got to the heart of the mountains, the more treacherous the path became. They reached the Cave of Mirrors, an ancient trial designed to test the resolve of those who sought the flame. Inside, the walls reflected their deepest fears. Lilia saw her family, frozen and lifeless, blaming her for not saving them. Alaric, too, was trapped in his own nightmare, reliving the moment when his quest for power destroyed everything he loved. The illusions were overwhelming, almost too real to break free from, but Lilia, fueled by her determination, managed to shatter the visions. She pulled Alaric from his own torment, and together, they emerged from the cave, though both were deeply shaken by what they had seen. Finally, they reached the chamber where the flame of eternal night resided. It was a grand, cathedral-like space, with high ceilings and walls covered in ancient carvings. In the center, a small, flickering flame burned with an intensity that seemed to defy the cold around it, but the flame was not unguarded. The Eternal Warden, a creature of massive size, stood before them, its body made of the very darkness they had fought against. Its eyes glowed with an ancient, malevolent light as it stepped forward, ready to destroy anyone who dared approach the flame. The battle was fierce. Lilia's sword clashed against the Warden's dark form, while Alaric unleashed his most powerful spells. But the Warden was relentless, its strength far surpassing anything they had faced before. Lilia's arms ached, her body was bruised, and she could feel her energy draining away. But she refused to give up. She had come too far to fail now. With a final, desperate strike, Lilia managed to pierce the Warden's heart. The creature let out a deafening roar before dissolving into a cloud of black smoke, leaving the chamber eerily silent. Exhausted but victorious, Lilia and Alaric approached the flame. But as they neared it, the flame spoke to them, not in words, but in a voice that resonated deep within their souls. It demanded a sacrifice. Only one could touch the flame, and that person would have to give up something precious in return. Lilia knew what had to be done. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady. She knew the price. It would take her vitality, her strength, perhaps even her life. But it was a price she was willing to pay. Alaric tried to stop her, but she shook her head. "This is my choice." With a deep breath, Lilia reached out and touched the flame. Instantly, she felt her life force being drained away, but as the flame grew brighter, she knew it was worth it. The light of the flame shot upward, piercing through the darkness and spreading across the sky. The sun, hidden for so long, began to rise once more, its warmth slowly returning to the world. Lilia collapsed, her body weak and frail. Alaric rushed to her side, using the last of his magic to heal her, though he knew she would never fully recover. She had saved the world, but the cost had been high. Together, they descended the mountain, watching as the world around them came back to life. Flowers bloomed, rivers thawed, and people emerged from their homes, blinking in the sunlight. The eternal night was over. Lilia returned to her village, though she no longer sought recognition or praise. She was content to live quietly, knowing that she had done her, almost musical in their eerie resonance. The wolves, their fur a matted blend of white and ice, leapt from the shadows with alarming speed. Lilia barely had time to draw her blade before they were upon her. She fought with a desperation fueled by her mission. Each swing of her sword, each step back against their relentless advance, was driven by the thought of her village and the lives depending on her success. The frost wolves were formidable, their claws raking against her armor and their teeth snapping dangerously close. But Lilia's determination was stronger than their hunger. With a final, powerful strike, she felled the last of the creatures, its body dissipating into a mist of ice. Breathing heavily, Lilia took a moment to steady herself. The battle had left her exhausted, her hands trembling, but she knew there was no turning back. She pressed onward, her journey now marked by the scars of her first fight. Days turned into weeks as she traversed the frozen landscape. The harsh elements took their toll, but Lilia's spirit remained unbroken. Then, as she neared the base of the Forbidden Mountains, she encountered a figure, an old mage with a long, silver beard and eyes that seemed to pierce through the endless night. His name was Alaric, and he too sought the flame of eternal night. Alaric's motives were not immediately clear. He spoke in cryptic riddles and seemed to possess knowledge of the flame's location, but his words were guarded, as though he had his own reasons for seeking the fire. He offered his assistance to Lilia, and though she was wary of him, the journey was perilous, and a companion could be valuable. Reluctantly, she agreed to join forces with him. As they ventured into the heart of the Forbidden Mountains, the challenges grew more formidable. The air grew colder, the wind fiercer, and the darkness more oppressive. Alaric's presence was a constant reminder of the mystery surrounding their quest, but he proved to be a valuable ally, using his magical prowess to clear obstacles and ward off lesser threats. The mountains themselves seemed alive, their icy peaks and treacherous slopes hiding ancient secrets and formidable dangers. They navigated through labyrinthine tunnels and across frozen chasms, guided only by the old inscriptions and Alaric's cryptic clues. The deeper they went, the more they felt the weight of the curse that had befallen their world. One evening, as they made camp in a cavern, Alaric finally opened up about his reasons. He had once been a guardian of the flame, entrusted with its protection. The curse that had plunged the world into eternal night had also driven him into exile, and he sought to reclaim his lost honor. His quest, it seemed, was intertwined with Lilia's, bound by a shared purpose and an unspoken hope. The next morning, they reached the final ascent, where the entrance to the chamber of the flame was said to be hidden. The last stretch was grueling, the mountain's surface was icy and treacherous, and they faced relentless blizzards that threatened to sweep them away. But Lilia's resolve and Alaric's magic guided them through. Finally, they stood before the entrance of an ancient, carved gate. The inscriptions told of trials that would test their worthiness. The gate creaked open with a groan, revealing a vast chamber bathed in a deep, foreboding darkness. At its center, on a pedestal surrounded by an aura of ancient power, lay the flame of eternal night. The flame was not a simple fire but a swirling vortex of energy that danced with an ethereal light. Its presence was both mesmerizing and overwhelming, a paradox of warmth and cold. Lilia approached it with reverence, her heart pounding with the gravity of the moment. As she reached out, the flame reacted, its light intensifying as though acknowledging her determination. Lilia hesitated for a heartbeat, then grasped the flame. A surge of energy coursed through her, and the chamber was illuminated by a brilliant light. The flame, once dark and foreboding, now radiated warmth and hope. Alaric watched, his face a mix of awe and satisfaction. The flame's power surged through the chamber, resonating with the world beyond. The curse that had cast the eternal night began to unravel, and the first hints of dawn broke through the pervasive darkness. Lilia, holding the flame, felt its warmth spread through her, a tangible promise of the sun's return. With a final, resolute effort, she carried it back through the treacherous mountains, its light guiding them home. As they emerged from the mountains, the horizon was touched with the colors of dawn. The sun, long lost to the endless night, began to rise once more, its light sweeping across the land and melting the icy grip of the curse. The people of Lilia's village saw the sun for the first time in generations. The warmth spread through their homes and hearts, reviving their spirits and restoring hope. The eternal night was over, and the world, now bathed in sunlight, began to heal from its long, cold slumber. Lilia's journey had not only rekindled the sun but also restored the hope and resilience of her people. The flame of eternal night had fulfilled its purpose, and in doing so, had reignited the warmth of life itself.